I thought I was losing my mind. Every week I filled the fridge with carefully prepared meals, yet it was always empty when I got home. I blamed my kids, thinking they were overeating or wasting food, but their answers didn't add up. One day, I came home early and discovered a truth that left me speechless and changed my perspective forever. Subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The scent of freshly baked lasagna lingered in the air as I closed the oven door and wiped my hands on a dish towel. It was Sunday evening, my weekly ritual of preparing meals for the week ahead. As a single mother of two, my life was a constant balancing act between my demanding job, my kids' schedules, and the endless list of household tasks. Cooking in bulk was my way of staying ahead, a way to ensure my kids, Jake, 15, and Mia, 10, always had home-cooked meals, even on my busiest days. I prided myself on this system. Every Sunday, I stocked the fridge with an array of neatly packed containers: pasta, roasted chicken, vegetables, and soups, each one labeled and organized. My fridge was a masterpiece of efficiency, a reflection of the effort I put into providing for my kids. But over the past month, something strange had started happening. By midweek, the fridge would be nearly empty, entire containers of food gone. At first, I thought it was just my growing teenagers. Jake had always had a healthy appetite, and Mia had recently discovered a love for after-school snacks. But the sheer volume of food that disappeared made no sense. "Are you two sneaking food to your rooms?" I asked one evening as we sat down for dinner. Jake looked up from his plate, eyebrows raised. "What?" "No, Mom. Why would we do that?" Mia, her face smeared with ketchup, shook her head vigorously. "I don't even like the leftovers," she declared. I sighed, trying to piece together the puzzle. If it wasn't them, then who or what was clearing out the fridge? The mystery continued, and my frustration grew. Every time I opened the fridge to find it nearly empty, I felt a mix of anger and confusion. I started buying extra groceries, thinking maybe I hadn't been preparing enough. But even then, the food vanished just as quickly. "Jake, you have to be honest with me," I said one evening after noticing another half-empty fridge. "Are you having friends over when I'm not home? Are they eating all the food?" Jake frowned, his tone defensive. "No, Mom. I swear. I don't even bring people over. It's just me and Mia after school." "And you're not eating it all yourself?" I pressed. "Mom," he said, exasperated, "do I look like I eat 3 lasagnas a week?" His response earned a snicker from Mia, but I wasn't laughing. The tension in the house started to build. I found myself snapping at the kids over small things, my frustration about the missing food seeping into everything else. I even began to second-guess myself. Was I miscounting the meals? Had I forgotten to cook enough? One evening, as I cleaned the kitchen, I noticed something odd. A few empty containers were missing their lids entirely, as though they had been hastily grabbed and taken away. I also realized that several spoons and forks were gone from the silverware drawer. "Did you two lose the Tupperware lids?" I asked Jake and Mia the next morning. "What lids?" Jake asked, not looking up from his cereal. "The ones from the fridge," I said. "And the silverware. Half of it's missing." Mia shrugged. "Maybe they're in the dishwasher." I checked. They weren't. The mystery deepened, and a growing unease settled over me. Something was happening in my home, and I couldn't explain it. Desperate for answers, I decided to take action. The following weekend, I purchased a small set of inexpensive cameras and installed them around the house, including one aimed at the kitchen. "Why are you putting up cameras?" Jake asked, watching me set one up on the kitchen shelf. I just want to make sure everything's okay, I replied vaguely. Jake raised an eyebrow but didn't press further. For the next few days, I eagerly checked the footage, hoping to catch a glimpse of what was happening. But to my frustration, the cameras revealed nothing out of the ordinary. The food continued to disappear, but there was no evidence of anyone taking it. Everything changed one Thursday afternoon. I had left work early after feeling unwell and decided to surprise the kids by picking them up from school. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed something unusual. The side gate leading to the backyard was slightly ajar. Curious, I parked the car and walked quietly around the side of the house. That's when I heard voices, muffled and low, coming from the back patio. I crept closer, my heart pounding. Peering around the corner, I froze at what I saw. Jake was standing near the back door, handing a Tupperware container to a man and a woman I didn't recognize. They looked haggard and unkempt, their clothes worn and dirty. The man held the container with trembling hands, his voice barely audible as he said, "Thank you, son. God bless you." The woman added, "We'll make it last, I promise." Jake nodded, his face serious. "Take whatever you need. There's more inside if you want." I stepped forward, my voice sharper than I intended. "Jake, what's going on here?" Jake's head snapped around, his eyes wide with panic. The man and woman flinched, clutching the container as if they expected me to take it back. "Mom," Jake stammered, "I can explain." "Who are these people? And why are you giving them our food?" I demanded, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and confusion. The man stepped forward, his expression apologetic. "Ma'am, please don't be mad at your son. He's just trying to help us." "Help you?" I repeated, my voice softening slightly. Jake took a deep breath, his gaze fixed on the ground. "They're homeless, Mom," he said quietly. "I met them near school a few weeks ago. They've been living in their car, and they didn't have any food. I couldn't just ignore them." My anger evaporated, replaced by a wave of guilt and sadness. I turned to the couple, taking in their tired faces and worn-out clothes. The woman held a small child's blanket in her hands, her fingers gripping it tightly. I invited the couple inside, offering them a seat at the table. Their names were Tom and Sandra, and they told me about the hardships that had brought them to this point. Lost jobs, mounting medical bills, and the difficulty of finding shelter. Jake watched nervously, clearly unsure of how I would react. I turned to him, tears in my eyes. "Jake, why didn't you tell me about this?" "I thought you'd say no," he admitted. "I just wanted to help them. I couldn't stand seeing them hungry." I pulled him into a hug, my heart swelling with pride and shame at the same time. "You should have told me," I said, my voice shaking, "but I'm so proud of you for having such a big heart." After learning about Tom and Sandra's struggles, I knew we couldn't let them leave without offering more than just a single meal. Their story was heartbreaking. Sandra explained how they'd lost their home after Tom's injury at his construction job left him unable to work for months. With mounting medical bills and no family to turn to, they had resorted to living in their car. Sandra's voice trembled as she spoke about their daily struggles. "We do everything we can to keep our little boy Ethan warm at night," she said, her eyes darting to the child's blanket she still clutched tightly. "But it's hard. Most shelters are full, and finding food is, well, you know how it is." Tom added, "Jake's been a blessing to us. We didn't know how we'd make it through some days, and then your son showed up with food and kindness we didn't deserve." I glanced at Jake, who was sitting quietly, his face flushed with embarrassment. You didn't think to tell me about this? I asked, my tone gentle but firm. Jake looked down at his hands. I didn't know how you'd react. I thought you'd tell me it wasn't safe, or that we couldn't afford to help. But they needed me, Mom. His words hit me hard. I realized that while I had been so focused on the mystery of the disappearing food, Jake had quietly taken it upon himself to help people in need, something I should have been proud of. I took a deep breath, looking back at Tom and Sandra. You don't need to live like this anymore, I said. We're going to figure something out. Sandra's eyes welled up with tears. You don't have to do that, ma'am. You've already done so much. I shook my head, cutting her off. Jake did what I hope any decent person would do, but now it's my turn to help. The first step was making sure they had enough to eat. I opened the fridge and pulled out the remaining containers of food, setting them on the table. Tom and Sandra hesitated, their pride making them reluctant to accept more, but I insisted. Take it, I said. You shouldn't have to choose between food and dignity. The moment I realized how dire Tom and Sandra's situation was, I knew I couldn't do this alone. The little help Jake and I had been giving them was just a band-aid. They needed real, lasting solutions. That evening, after Jake and I returned home, I sat down at the kitchen table with a notebook and started brainstorming ways to get them the help they deserved. Jake, I said, as he sat across from me, we need to think bigger. Giving them food is great, but it's not enough. What else do you think we can do? He shrugged at first, his brow furrowed. I don't know. Maybe ask other people to help? His words gave me an idea. The next morning, I posted on our local community Facebook group. I wrote about Tom and Sandra's story, carefully avoiding too many personal details to protect their dignity, but making it clear that this family was in desperate need of help. The response was immediate. Within hours, comments began pouring in. People offered donations of clothes, blankets, groceries, and even cash. A local business owner messaged me privately, saying he had contacts at a nearby shelter that might have space for them. One comment in particular stood out. I've got an empty guest house on my property, wrote Margaret, a retired school teacher from the neighborhood. If they need a safe place to stay, they're welcome to use it until they get back on their feet. The next day, I reached out to Margaret and arranged to visit her property with Tom and Sandra. Her guest house was small but cozy, with a single bedroom, a kitchenette, and a bathroom. It was worlds better than sleeping in a car, and Tom and Sandra couldn't hold back their tears of gratitude. This is more than we ever hoped for, Sandra said, her voice shaking. Thank you so much. Margaret smiled warmly. We all need a little help sometimes, she said. You just focus on getting back on your feet. But the help didn't stop there. The local business owner who had contacted me earlier connected Tom with a part-time job at his hardware store. Though it wasn't construction work, it was something Tom could do without aggravating his injury, and it gave him a renewed sense of purpose. Sandra, too, found work. Another neighbor recommended her to a family looking for a part-time housekeeper. Within weeks, the couple went from surviving to rebuilding their lives, thanks to the outpouring of support from the community. Helping Tom and Sandra was not an overnight transformation. It was a series of small victories that slowly pieced their lives back together. Once they moved into Margaret's guest house, they finally had a place to call home, even temporarily. The relief of sleeping in a warm bed, taking a hot shower, and waking up without the constant worry of being asked to leave was written all over their faces. Sandra became the caretaker of the house almost immediately. Every morning, she swept the porch, cleaned the windows, and made sure everything was immaculate. I want Margaret to know how much we appreciate her kindness," she said, running a cloth over the kitchen counters. Her pride in taking care of the space made me realize how much dignity they had lost while living on the streets, and how determined they were to reclaim it. Tom, on the other hand, took to his job at the hardware store with a quiet determination. Though he was still nursing his injury, he showed up every day with a smile, eager to learn and contribute. The store owner, Mr. Harris, later told me, "Tom's one of the hardest workers I've ever hired. You can tell he's grateful to be here, and it shows in everything he does." The outpouring of support from the neighborhood didn't stop at the initial wave of donations. Margaret organized a rotating schedule of volunteers who brought hot meals to the guest house twice a week. I signed up to cook one of the nights, and Jake often insisted on helping me prepare the dishes. One evening, as we were delivering dinner, Mia tugged on my sleeve. "Mommy," she said, looking up at me with wide eyes, "can I give Ethan my teddy bear? He doesn't have one, and I think he needs it more than me." I knelt down to her level, my heart swelling with pride. "Of course, sweetheart. That's very kind of you." When we arrived at the guest house, Mia shyly handed Ethan her favorite teddy bear. Ethan's face lit up, and he hugged the bear tightly. "Thank you," he said, his voice full of excitement. Watching my children give so freely and compassionately reminded me of how much we had to be grateful for, and how far we had come as a family. Of course, the road to stability wasn't without its challenges. Sandra confided in me one day, while we were sorting through donated clothes. "Some days, it feels like we'll never get back to where we were," she said, her voice tinged with exhaustion. "Even though we have a roof over our heads, it's hard not to think about everything we've lost." I placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're already doing so much," I reassured her. "You've come so far in such a short time. It's okay to feel overwhelmed, but don't forget how strong you are." Sandra smiled weakly. "You've been our rock, you know that? If it weren't for you and Jake, I don't know where we'd be." Tom faced similar struggles. His injury, though healing, often flared up, making it difficult for him to complete certain tasks at the hardware store. One afternoon, I visited him during his lunch break and found him sitting on a bench, rubbing his leg with a pained expression. "Tom, you need to take care of yourself," I said, sitting down beside him. "I know," he replied, sighing heavily, "but I don't want to let anyone down. I'm just grateful to have this job." "Letting people help you isn't the same as letting them down," I said gently. "You've done more than enough, and no one expects you to push through pain. Take it one day at a time." The turning point came when Sandra received a call from a local daycare center. They had an opening for a part-time administrative assistant position, and one of our neighbors had recommended her for the role. Sandra was ecstatic. "It's perfect," she said, her eyes shining. "It's steady work, and I'll be able to pick up Ethan after school. It's like everything is finally falling into place." Tom also began to see improvement. With the help of a physical therapist, funded by donations from the community, he regained much of his mobility and was able to take on more responsibilities at the hardware store. The couple's newfound stability brought a sense of peace to their little family. Ethan enrolled in a nearby school and quickly made friends, something that had been impossible during their time on the streets. Watching him run around the playground, carefree and laughing, was a sight that brought tears to Sandra's eyes. The months that followed were a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. With each passing day, Tom and Sandra began to rebuild their lives piece by piece, laying a foundation of stability they hadn't felt in years. Sandra thrived in her new role at the daycare center. Though it was only part-time, the job gave her more than just a paycheck. It gave her purpose. She quickly became a favorite among the staff, known for her warmth and organizational skills. Parents would often stop to chat with her at pickup time, praising her for her cheerful demeanor. One day, Sandra shared a moment of pride with me as we sat together in Margaret's garden. "They're talking about making me full-time," she said, her face glowing with excitement. "I didn't think I'd ever feel this useful again." "You deserve it," I replied, squeezing her hand. "You've worked so hard for this." Meanwhile, Tom was growing more confident at his job. His manager, Mr. Harris, began entrusting him with more responsibilities, including supervising inventory and training new hires. "Tom's a natural leader," Mr. Harris told me one day when I stopped by the store. "I'm thinking about promoting him to a management position once he's ready." Hearing this news felt like a victory for all of us. Ethan, too, began to blossom in ways that were heartwarming to see. He adjusted quickly to school, his once quiet demeanor replaced with the easy confidence of a child who finally felt safe. "He made a best friend today," Sandra told me one evening, as we stood in the kitchen preparing dinner together. "He came home talking about this boy named Alex, who loves dinosaurs as much as he does. He's never had a friend like that before." Sandra's voice wavered with emotion, and I could tell how much Ethan's happiness meant to her. For so long, she and Tom had been focused on mere survival. Now, they could finally give Ethan the carefree childhood every child deserves. As the couple's financial situation improved, they began making plans for the future. Sandra opened a savings account, setting aside money each month to eventually secure a home of their own. Tom, ever the planner, created a budget and started researching affordable housing options in the area. One afternoon, Tom and Sandra called Jake and me over to Margaret's guest house for an announcement. "We've found a place," Tom said, barely able to contain his excitement. "It's a small apartment, but it's ours. We're moving in next month." The joy on their faces was contagious. Ethan was already talking about how he wanted to decorate his room, and Sandra was beaming with pride. Moving day came faster than any of us expected. Margaret hosted a small farewell gathering for Tom and Sandra, inviting all the neighbors who had helped along the way. The backyard was filled with laughter and chatter as we celebrated the family's fresh start. Mia ran up to Ethan with a handmade card. "For your new room," she said shyly. Ethan opened it to find a drawing of their two families holding hands, surrounded by hearts. "This is the best," Ethan exclaimed, hugging Mia tightly. As I watched the two children, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for everything this journey had taught us. Tom and Sandra's new apartment was modest, but cozy, a two-bedroom unit in a quiet neighborhood with a small park nearby. Jake and I helped them move in, hauling boxes up the stairs and arranging furniture. When we finished, Sandra pulled me aside, her eyes brimming with tears. "We couldn't have done this without you," she said. "You and Jake gave us hope when we had none." "Don't thank us," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "You're the ones who made this happen. You fought for your family, and you should be so proud of that." As Tom and Sandra settled into their new home, our relationship with them remained strong. We visited often, sharing meals and stories, and they quickly became an extended part of our family. Jake, who had been the catalyst for this incredible journey, continued to visit Ethan regularly. Watching the two of them together, I realized how much this experience had shaped Jake's character. He had grown into a compassionate, thoughtful young man who understood the importance of helping others. One evening, as we sat on Tom and Sandra's porch, I asked Jake, "Do you ever regret helping them?" Jake shook his head firmly. "Not for a second," he said. "If I hadn't, I'd have missed out on knowing some of the best people I've ever met." The following Christmas, Tom and Sandra surprised us with an unexpected gift. A framed photograph of all of us together, taken during their move-in day. Beneath the photo was a simple message. Because of you, we have a home. Thank you for believing in us. I placed the photo on our mantle, a daily reminder of how one small act of kindness could ripple outward and change lives. Looking back, I realized how much I had learned from this experience. What started as a frustrating mystery about missing food had turned into a life lesson about compassion, resilience, and the power of community. This story isn't just about Tom and Sandra. It's about all of us. It's a reminder that we all have the power to make a difference, no matter how small our actions may seem.